will get a 1 hour flex credit for this session. We have your flex certificates ready, and I think they'll be delivered to you in your mailboxes tomorrow. Also, we will mark your attendance complete in My Learning Plan, so it will be on your transcript. You do not have to upload your flex credit certificate into My Learning Plan. That certificate is just for your records, just to help you when you start tracking all of your flex hours. So with that, okay, our goal for today, we, number one, need to fulfill our requirements for our training with the Tennessee Teacher Code of Ethics. And we're going to do that by talking through the educator's obligations to your students, as well as the educator's obligation to the teaching profession. And we're also going to touch on topics that have to do with FERPA, student hazing, student discrimination, FOIA requests, and social media guidelines. So we've got some pretty heavy topics that we're going to talk about, but it's absolutely 100% relevant to every person in the room today. All right, so just to give you a little backstory on the Tennessee Teacher Code of Ethics, it's a state law, and this law has been around for about the early 2000s, but as of July 1st, 2018, the Tennessee General Assembly significantly changed the Tennessee Teacher Code of Ethics. And some of those changes including expanding the educator's obligation to students. Before, there were about 8 obligations. Now there are 19 obligations. In addition, the state now mandates that school districts give a yearly training to their staffs on the Tennessee Teacher Code of Ethics. And they've also put in a mandatory reporting component for any staff member who sees or has knowledge of another staff member violating those Tennessee Teacher Code of Ethics. So what we're going to do is we're going to look through and talk about our Teacher Code of Ethics, and then Sarah, Kate, and Mason are going to bring these obligations to students to life, and they're going to show you how you guys are already participating or you're already using these in your scope of work. So as we begin our obligations to students, the first set of obligations have to deal with abiding by state and federal laws, not unreasonably restraining students when they're learning, and then providing a student with the best possible strategies that an educator knows. And when I think about abiding by all applicable federal and state laws, I don't know if you ever had a professor in your studies that said ignorance is not an excuse in the eyes of the law. That's kind of what I think about that. As an educator, you are required to know state, federal laws, your district policies. This is just a friendly reminder that you have access to all of GMSD policies 24 hours a day, 7 days a week on our main GMSD website. And if you ever wanted to know the law, this TCA right up here, it stands for Tennessee Code Annotated. And what you can do is you can just do a Google search. You can type in Tennessee Code Annotated, and you're going to see a site. It's called the Lexus site. It's not a car dealership site. It's a site that you can go to, and you can pull up any state law, and you can read that law and learn more about the law. The chapter that pertains to all of us in this room is public education, and it's chapter number 49. And any law that has to do with public education is included in chapter 49. So I always tell people, you know, on a Sunday afternoon when you don't have anything to do, put your jammies on, pop some popcorn, and you know, you can start looking at the law. All right, so I'm going to turn it over to Sarah now, and she's going to show you how interacting and using some of these strategies with students with special needs, you're, again, living out those Tennessee Teacher Code of Ethics.
Hey there. So, while you're reading all of those laws, you can peruse FERPA, right? Because that's another federal law that we interact with on a daily basis. So just kind of wanted to bring these to life and that, okay, what am I responsible for? just know this is one of those federal laws they're speaking to, and that says that all students ages 3 to 22 have a right to a free, appropriate public education. So regardless of what walks through the door tomorrow, guess what? This is a public school. We get federal funding. Everybody has a right to free public education in their least restrictive environment. So I'll try not to talk to legalese the whole time. I've been accused of that a little bit because that's the lane I live in. But moving on, the restraint and isolation law. So that means if you're in a situation where a student has to be transported, restrained, or isolated, we have training for that. Okay, if you've been to a CPI or PCM training, raise your hand. Okay, we've got some friends in the room that know what I'm talking about. So some of our students, these would be pieces that you would be reviewing in that behavior intervention plan. When you know if there's a crisis, if someone is showing continuous aggression, continuous self-harm, real disruptive behavior. It's something we use as last resort, but there's rules that, you know, guidelines of how we have to document that. So that's one of those laws to pay close attention to. And moving on to number 3. So providing the student with professional education services that are in a non-discriminatory manner. That means all means all. There is no such thing as special ed kids or those kids in A building. Not that that's ever been said. All means all means every student in this building is a gen ed student first. Accommodations are not an option, even though it's high school. Because guess what? A lot of those accommodations go into their adulthood, okay? So if it's on an IEP, regardless if you're a PE coach, I'm thinking elementary land for a hot second. Any teacher in this room, if you have a child that has an IEP and there's accommodations in there, you're responsible for assisting and making sure that those are met. I think I've talked through all that, but just making sure that all students are treated with dignity and respect, regardless of, you know, you have an issue, and we may get to this later on in the presentation, but let's say you read through an IEP at a glance, and you're like, this is impossible. I don't understand this. What does this mean? Please have those conversations with your special ed case managers in the room prior to the IEP meeting. Worst case scenario would be having this discussion in front of the parent. Like, we don't do that here. That is a huge no-no. Or using the F word. The F word being fair. Okay? That's not fair. Those are discussions you do not have inside of an IEP meeting, but planning meetings are okay. That's the time you have those discussions with your colleagues. Let's talk through what this looks like. And I got ahead of myself. Communication is key and vital. So again, having those conversations, this presentation was originally for before school started, and then we had some changes around end service. So hopefully these conversations are already starting because school is already in session, right? So when you go to the SPED office to sign files, when you sign your name to a document, that means that you've read said document, not just that you signed on the signature line, right? So if something were to happen and a parent who has procedural safeguards and under that is the right to challenge anything within an IEP meeting, if we go down the legal route and we're in court somewhere, it's not just going to be Sarah Huffman or Miss Roya back there on the stand. The general ed personnel or anybody else that has signed that document will be right there with us. So ensure you are signing a legal document, that you have read the legal document, that you understand the pieces within that. If the child has a behavior plan, there's accommodations in there, that you are aware of all those pieces behind it. I know time is precious, and trying to get with your colleagues can be difficult and challenging, but I just highly encourage being proactive on the front end will really help out on the back end. If you are struggling with an accommodation, or you have a child that has straight Fs that has an IEP, what does the communication look like between you and that teacher? Making sure you guys are on the same page about what support looks like is going to be important. And then Valerie, we've joked around about this picture. If you know Miss Speakman, you've been in a meeting with me where there's been an issue with a child's IEP. So if you look at that stack of papers, this is emails that went back and forth between a teacher and a parent who were friends. And that happens, right? Kind of odd sometimes, but maybe you were friends before you got the child on your caseload or in your classroom. Things are all happy and fun until they're not. So this teacher and parent were just emailing back and forth casual things like, so-and-so didn't have his medication today, you're in for it, good luck. And the teacher responds like, oh, well, you're gonna owe me a drink later. Very maybe innocent behavior, but professional, not so much. Kate's gonna talk about this later on, but anything within our GMSD email is something that anyone can pull, right? So if this is challenged, or I don't want to steal your thunder about the request, I'll let you go with the free information act. But this, just as far as IEP goes, guys, your email will be pulled if anything's challenged. So every bit of that was evidence for the parent when they were claiming that something wasn't met within the IEP. So if a judge is looking at, okay, this teacher is saying, you owe me a drink later, or just kind of joking around about things, then you can see where this went. So this is a big no-no. So do not put anything into an email that you aren't comfortable with a judge reading aloud. Okay? Obviously our IEPs have to be revised annually, but many of our families here in Germantown, we meet more than annually. Okay, we get to know some of them very well. And maintaining a professional relationship, so ensuring we're not texting parents, it's a huge, huge, huge no-no. One, your work-life balance is called into question because they're texting you on Sundays and Saturdays, and what do they want? An immediate response, right? If your mom or husband or child texts you, what do they want? An answer right away. Same thing happens when you start texting parents. So that's a big no-no that we're gonna stay away from. And you guys are at the high school, so I really preach this at the elementary level. If you ruin a relationship there, guess what? I get to live with them till they're 22. And same with you guys. So just want you to keep that in mind, a little visual of, I don't want my email sitting in front of a lawyer and everyone else to read. So if I have something to say to somebody, and maybe it's not the best, go to them in person.
So as we travel along the educators' obligations to students, we have some new obligations that are included on this next slide. It's important that you always make sure that your students are safe in your classroom, not only physically, but now emotionally as well. And the state has felt that it is important to make sure that there's an expected behavior that adults do not intentionally embarrass students when they are interacting with them. And I know that that is tough because we're all humans, and children do things that get on our nerves or cause us to get frustrated, just like anyone. But it's always important now, it's an expected behavior for you to remember not to intentionally embarrass a student. Also, just want to highlight number 11, not use professional relationships with students for private advantage. I know we have GMSD has a conflict of interest policy. I think we talked about this last year. That it specifically says you can't tutor or coach students that are currently enrolled in your school for a private compensation. That conflict of interest policy, as well as it now being included in the Tennessee Teacher Code of Ethics, it's for your protection. We don't want to put you in a compromising position between you and a parent asking you to do something that is unethical. So if you weren't aware of the conflict of interest policy beforehand, nor the educator's obligation to students, now you are. And so today, again, it's all about bringing an awareness to you, because I'm looking at some of y'all's faces and I feel like you guys are getting the in HR we call it the Asper look, when you get overwhelmed, like what in the world is all of this? So It's okay, the whole goal today is just to bring an awareness.
So number 7, if you look at number 7, it says make responsible effort to protect the students from conditions harmful to learning or health and safety. When we went to the first school, I think I heard somebody say, oh my gosh, this packet's a lot bigger, we really messed up. It's not really y'all didn't do something, but South Tennessee did. So we've added 2 policies to your packet, and that's a statewide. They've asked us to put this in your hands, which is hazing, and then one on bullying, cyberbullying. So make sure you leave with a packet of the easiest policies, and make sure you read through them. Hazing, just to put a couple of things here. Hazing means an intentional or reckless act in the state on or off the LA property by one student acting alone or with others that is directed against any other student that endangers the mental or physical health or safety of that student, or that induces or causes a student to endanger the student's mental or physical health or safety. And then you can go on and look at the bullying one too. We know how it's a hot topic right now, and we know the effects that's happening with bullying. We know that we see some violence in school due to this, and so we have to be really aware of what's going on in our classroom, and we can't let things go. We can't just let things slide hoping that it wasn't a big deal and it goes away, because it could have some huge impacts in our school. So we need to be aware of this and just make sure that you are doing everything you can to keep your students safe, which means you are calling out anything you see and checking up on anything you see. There is anonymous alerts. If you don't feel comfortable doing it, you can put anonymous alert in, and that includes teacher-to-teacher bullying too. That's included here too. If you want to put anonymous alerts for that, you can do that as well. And so if you look at the cyberbullying or bullying policy, just to show you what exactly it covers employees behaviors, students behaviors, while on school property, at any school-sponsored activity, on school-provided equipment or transportation, so on our devices, or at any official school bus stop. And then it goes on to explain that if it happens away from school, but then kind of leads on to the school and causes disruption here, then we also are responsible for that too. So read through this and know the policy.
Okay, I kind of talked about this earlier about the texting. We laugh about this because my colleague Ann Coleman is probably the worst at this. She makes phone calls from her cell phone all the time and says, Sarah, not once in the 20-something years since I've been in special ed has a parent abused it. And I was like, well, they have in other cases, okay? And they have in Germantown caused us a lot of issues where a teacher was texting a parent and it was innocent, but the parent was not using it for innocent purposes. So I just want to continue to just give you guys the information on the front end to be proactive. Another fun thing is there are really interesting IEP meetings that have happened here at Houston High. I think my intern last year, who's now a current employee, Jane Joyner, her first IEP meeting was pretty legendary. To the point, it's one of those you want to come back and yell to anyone that will listen. You will not believe what happened in my meeting today, right? That's the first, we want to, when something insane happens, or maybe something really good, to be positive, happens, the first thing you want to do is go to your colleague and kind of decompress, right? Okay, there's laws that guard against that. You cannot have conversations about students, even crazy things that happen with an IEP meeting, unless that person is on their team, okay? It's a need to know. So anyone that's signing that file, for instance, maybe a coach wasn't in your particular IEP meeting, but the accommodations that were discussed, it is vital for that coach to know the information. That's completely appropriate to go find that person and say, hey, I want to make sure you catch this. This is what happened today, just so you know, and we're all on the same page. That's appropriate. But going back to your colleague and saying, my God, this mama was so crazy, I'm pretty sure she hit the crack pipe before coming in. Now that may have happened in a previous district I've been in, but not so much in Germantown. But those kind of things used to happen. You want to go tell somebody. It was like Jerry Springer in my IEP meeting today. We cannot do those things. That will get us in trouble very quickly. Families in Germantown know their rights. A lot of families in Germantown have attorneys that are just on the payroll all the time. I don't say this to scare you. I say this so that you are informed. There has been no other placement since I started working in special education where I have been on it all the time and challenged in every meeting I've been sitting in. So I just want to give you guys the information you need. Your big takeaway today from me, I'm not trying to be here to scare you. Read your IEP, communicate with your teachers, maintain boundaries, and give accommodations.
FERPA
Yeah, so FERPA, so the question is, what can you put on your website, what can't you put on your website? So, you know, you want to be able to display your students' work and show some great things that are happening, but you know when you're trying to embarrass the student, like this example. The parent knows who that student is. I mean, just because you're not, even if you're not adding the name, they know who it is, and there's going to be probably a follow-up from that parent. So when you put stuff on your website, you know, make sure you don't put any names, especially with pictures and names. That's a big no-no, because it just, you know why, but if you are using, what you can do though, if you're using Schoology, that is they have to enter in their own account. Then they can, if a parent goes on and sees something in Schoology, they don't see the other student stuff. They only see their student stuff. But you can put stuff in Schoology, and it's private. It's your login. It's their login, so it's not a big deal. But if you're posting stuff to social media or to a website, you have to be very careful about identifying students and what context you're putting that work in there, and if you're trying to embarrass them, if you're trying to show the good work they're doing. And this also includes, like, if you're buying something from Teachers Pay Teacher. This is something I deal with every year. I have that company contacting us and say, we owe them money because a teacher has bought something off Teachers Pay Teacher and then put it up on the website for their students to download. Well, that gives access to anybody in the country to download. So now what they're selling is free to anybody. So that doesn't quite work. So you have to put it on. If you put it on Schoology, again, it's private. Only your students can download it. It would work that way. But if you're downloading something, if you're paying for something online, you really need to give manual copies or put it in a private space like Schoology. Yeah, she talked about not responding to parents on social media. So make sure that when a parent contacts you through social media, always direct them to your email. You want a record of what y'all are talking about, right? You want a record of your conversation, and that's going to be saved in your email. It's going to be archived in our server, so you want to be able to have that. So don't start anybody's conversation, even if they're your best friend, like she's saying. Don't start that conversation in a professional manner. Direct them to your email and have that conversation there, or phone conversation is probably even better, because then if you say something on accident, it's not going to be in paper and writing form where they can show it. If you are putting something in email, they could, and they have, taken a screenshot of that email and thrown it on social media too. So you got to be very careful of what you're saying. The next slide. This is about colleagues and about students. Make sure you're not describing students. When you're describing them physically, you have to be very careful. You know, short, tall, big, small. Anybody can be offended by no matter what you say. So when you are describing a student to another colleague, a parent can get that email and it can be very offensive to them. So, be very specific what you're saying. Use facts only in email. And in what case we'll talk about it as a FOIA, which means that anybody in Tennessee can walk up to our office with their driver's license and say, I want to see email, every email this teacher has sent to, this year, and we got to give it to them. All your emails, we have to give it to them by law. So you have to be careful of what you're putting in email. If you're going to have bad days and you're going to want to go vent and you're going to want to say stuff, like I worked at a restaurant, we had a walk-in cooler. We used to love to go back there and just yell, and nobody could hear us. Find that space. Find a place where you can take a colleague and vent and then go back and say it in person, say it verbally, and that way it's not in writing anywhere, because it can get you in trouble if you say something, you're mad for an instant, and then bam, it's done. Just be careful. I think is our next. Is that you? I got you, right?
Okay, so this next one, and I'll take over, and I've got sort of a three-pronged presentation for you guys today, has a little bit to do with social media. And to be clear, we don't have a social media policy here in the district, so there's nothing to read specifically about social media. However, you should be aware that in many federal court cases and in many instances, teachers across the country have lost their jobs over things that they have posted on social media. And the courts are generally ruling in favor of the districts. In other words, it's not so much a violation of your First Amendment right to express yourself, so much as it is if you are violating our staff ethics policy within your post, that is where the punishment can come from. So some good examples of, this is an innocuous one, but I just want to quit my job and live under a rock. Not a great thing to post on social media, as you are a representative of our school district. And it certainly doesn't do a lot for marketing purposes for people that are deciding whether or not this is a friendly place to send their children. And then finally, there's a bunch of case studies that you could look up on the internet of things that teachers have actually gone in and said. In this case, this was a mentor, so a teacher mentor, who was demoted from her position for posting the comments that you see up there. She described one administrator as a smug, know-it-all creep who has a reputation of doing something with secretaries. So, yes, they were demoted. They weren't fired over this comment. And you'll find that we're a kind sort, but if you do have a habit of posting, I don't know, colorful things on the internet, sometimes those do get printed and sent over to HR, and we'll let them handle that. This is definitely not me.
It's like, I'll take a seat.
So I just want everyone to take a minute and to read obligation to students. Number 15 it's probably the most powerful obligation that there is, that's been added to the teacher code of ethics.
That we need to be written out.
So this obligation to students was written because this type of behavior wasn't happening in California, or it wasn't happening in New York, but it was happening in the state of Tennessee, where educators have used their position of power to groom students to have inappropriate relationships with. And I know, like, I heard like when people started reading, like, Rome's like, oh my gosh, I can't believe this ever happened. Unfortunately, it's the reality that we live in Tennessee. And so the Tennessee General Assembly, and all of us in this room, I think, have that expectation that it is not okay to behave in this manner. So much so, it's against the law as educators to groom your students and to have inappropriate sexual relationships with them. In addition, the obligations to students now include it is illegal to provide drugs or alcohol to students. There have been teachers in Tennessee that have done this, so the state has said we have to spell this out, that it is an expectation that no educators coming in contact with students in Tennessee are to provide drugs and alcohol. And so basically, if we wanted to summarize your obligation to your students, it's just to maintain a professional approach anytime you are interacting with your student at all times. All right, so I'm going to turn it back over to Kate. I know that was heavy information. She's going to talk to you about social media now.
So while social media is very serious and some of the things that you post in there can end up being really serious, there's also a light side of social media. And we do encourage each of you in here to go out there and represent the district in good form and fashion. As a matter of fact, our marketing budget, being a public school, is almost non-existent, and you are our best resource for promoting this school. You are our best weapon for fighting negative images that might happen on social media about this school. In other words, it would be very helpful, and it's very helpful, we find, when teachers give that slice of life window into the daily classroom here at Houston High School about the wonderful things that are happening here in this building. And you guys are the only ones that may be available and physically in the room, in the space to do that for us. So we'll talk about some positives first. We can keep going. Yeah. There are lots of ways to use social media as an instructional tool. It could help, and I'm not going to read these, but you guys understand, obviously, we are not telling you don't be on social media. However, it's not a great idea to be on social media talking about things that fall outside of the scope of your job, like something you're going to buy or do later while you are sitting in class with people's students. You can click it, I think, there you go. So, lots of schools have developed hashtags. You guys have some hashtags here too. And there are some folks sitting in this room that do really great on social media. You're a huge presence and a positive light for your school and for the district. And being that you are our flagship high school, it's incredibly important. We would love to see more Houston high school teachers on Twitter, on Instagram, posting, like I said, slice of life pictures of the great things that are happening in your classroom. That being said, keeping FERPA in mind, I wouldn't start naming students in all the photos, and you can always ask your students if they have permission. And if you need to know who doesn't have permission because you're worried that they don't know, I'm happy to assist you with getting that information, as would your administrators. It can also be found in Skyward. This is just like Twitter for dummies, but essentially tagging people on either Instagram or Twitter does increase the engagement that you'll get, so you'll get a higher return on the post that you're putting about the school. So I spoke to this earlier, sort of accidentally. Sorry about that. But yes, your post should reflect professionalism at all times. You can have private accounts, but if it's a public account, and especially if you are, especially if you would ever tweet about something in your classroom, this is real. This happened in 2013. This woman tweeted this. She had a glass of wine at the airport. She was the director of communications for a large firm. Oh my, it's always those communications people. But she got on the plane. By the time she got off, she had lost her job, and this had been retweeted so many times that I think she will have a hard time finding a job as a communications director, at least, to represent a company. So, and again, I think she had a glass of wine and was probably kidding, and I'm sure we all have negative thoughts that we probably should keep to ourselves. She did not. She made this choice, and there are real consequences to the things that you post on social media. We teach our kids that every day. You know, it's real. It's really real. These are also some real posts of teachers that got into trouble as far as their jobs were concerned. This one says, well, I have an annual IEP this morning with lawyers and crazy parents. This student is a hot mess, but so sweet, so after work I'm hitting happy hour at least. I have something to look forward to. Deep breath, I'm going in. That's real. I did not make that up. I'm sure the girl who's taking my economics class for the second time will make an excellent mom come December. Hashtag sarcasm. Probably not okay. Now, my thing about these two, I think if you're planning to violate your professional code of ethics, I wouldn't advertise it on the internet. You know? So if you're gonna break rules, I mean, don't break rules, right, Alyssa? Here I am dining with a student from my second period tonight. Yeah, I wouldn't post that kind of stuff on the internet for so many obvious reasons, because then not only are you violating staff ethics, but you're also shining a negative light on the school. All right, now FOIAs, and it's funny, I joked, I even took a picture of the FOIA that we were dealing with earlier this week because it rivaled what Ms. Speakman's picture had. It was double. It took up an entire paper, and it's going to take something like 19 hours to read and redact. there are differences. So you write a lot of things in a day. Now, your cell phone records, those can be subpoenaed, but technically speaking, those are yours as far as the school district is concerned. Unless you're breaking the law or someone thinks that you've broken the law and, you know, a court of law says that you hand those over. The scary thing, though, is that a Freedom of Information Act does not work like a subpoena. Anyone with a Tennessee driver's license is now qualified to say, hey, Ryan, I'd like to see all of your emails for the last 4 years. And usually they're looking for something. Sometimes they don't know what they're looking for, and then they widen it even more. There are things that we do to safeguard y'all. For example, your personnel files are also a FOIA-able document, so people can walk up to district office and say, I'd like to FOIA Tim Boyer's personnel records. And so if that happens to you, I will give you a call and let you know and send you a copy of what the press or the angry concerned citizen is about to see. That's out of fairness, and if they are public records, then you are a member of the public as well, and we don't want that to be a surprise to you. As far as emails go, I typically don't contact you unless there's something I think that you need to worry about. A lot of the emails, so when people FOIA an entire, it's just daily stuff that teachers email. That seems completely normal, but it's all included in there. Obviously, when these records are released, we don't release your birthday, we don't release your social security number, we don't release your home address or your home contact information of any type or kind. So it takes some time to redact that information, but we do want to protect you in any way that we can to the full extent of that law. Does anyone, well, later if you have any questions about FOIAs, I'm happy to let you to know what I know. These are my favorite tips after looking at FOIAs across the district for the last 5 years. My first tip is when you send a large email to a large group of people, it helps me and it reduces your digital footprint substantially when you blind carbon copy the recipients of that list. So unless you're running into a bounce back issue, but even if it's a bounce back issue, then you'd have to email them individually, which would still be better than sending emails to lists of 20 or more people at once. What happens is if anybody replies all, then we print 20 of those emails. And so that's how sometimes we get some information in those FOIAs that I think teachers might not want parents to see. Like they've emailed something out to a class and then a parent emails them back and then they start emailing back and forth and all the parents' names in that entire class are included in that FOIA. Does that make sense? And so now every conversation you're having with every parent in response to that message is now in the hands of the angry parent, who you probably answered very tactfully because you have a specific relationship with that said parent. Does that make sense? Okay. Okay, so somebody texts you on your cell phone. To avoid getting into a subpoena situation, my favorite trick is if they text you on a cell phone or if they message you on Facebook Messenger. That's my favorite. I want to be like, I only do this for a job. Like, please don't try to talk to me through that. If they do, I always respond with, hey, sorry to be a pest, could you email me? You know? And then if they are emailing you and it's a pointed email and it's going to a bad place fast, and you're thinking, it's not smart to respond in writing. Have you ever encountered a communication like that? That sometimes you're thinking, wow, this is face-to-face, this is telephone call, this is, I'm forwarding it directly to Missy. Sorry, I'm just picking my mic there. Don't just do that. Also respond in the email, I am calling you today at 3:27 p.m. Boop. Send. Or, I am forwarding your email to Missy Abel. Thank you for your time. One of those affirmational just, I received this, I have processed this feedback, and here's my response. And your response isn't a typed out response, because have you seen on social media and in the media how they like to play that game that Jessica Minton returned my messages? Well, yes, she did. She called you and spent 4 hours on the phone with you, right? But there's no record of that. But if you provide that affirmational statement, I think that helps a little bit when the media, at least, is looking through those emails. They see that we care, if that. Finally, remember that all of your staff-to-staff emails are also FOIA-able, so try not to complain about your boss or other colleagues, because it's actually a violation of staff ethics to like complain about other colleagues unless you complain to their face first, and that would be an easy way to prove that you didn't do that, I guess. And it's also, doesn't look good when Fox 13 is reading through a little squabble about what time the pep rally was. Then finally, tip number 4, avoid professional conversations via social media. A lot of school districts are even starting to hire a company that archives the social media of teachers in the district and schools. If we want to avoid getting into that area, let us not conduct what we consider our official business on social media. So again, if somebody messages you something very important, the response is, wow, that's so important, I'm going to respond to you with my email. Or you can probably just respond to them directly with your email and copy their message in. All right? Okay, official pages versus non-official pages. This is a repeat or a three-peat, really, of this presentation that I've given before. There are some people out there that just love to hate us. It's hard being the prettiest girl at the party, sometimes, I think, as far as GMSD is concerned. And a lot of people like to watch something ugly. So there's a lot of audience, or there's a big audience, I think, for that. But the people that are speaking, you've got to stop and think, how many people in those social media forums do you see posting negative things? It's about 12. So don't let that affect your day-to-day. Do not go in there as some keyboard warrior thinking that you're going to fix that problem. I don't think they want information, those 12 people, right? They just want to cause a controversy. And you giving them more information sometimes makes that worse. And it's like the best way to put out a fire is to suffocate it. Yeah. Okay. All right. If you could help us by not posting on those sites that seem to delve into just like literal hate speech about our district, that is very helpful. What we really want to do is drive them to us when they have questions. They should not go to Facebook and ask 30 of their friends that they're like, oh, I'm so mad and I think I hate blah, blah, blah. And they want people to weigh in and say, I feel the same way. That's okay. And that needs to exist because, you know, this is America and they have the freedom to be dissatisfied with the products. But if you would help us by driving them to proper channels, that would be better. All right, there's a quick definition of trolling. We'll just keep going. There's even this hilarious like social media response procedure that they gave Mason 5 years ago, the communications conference. I just say most of the time no, unless they're like, hey Jenna Matakavich, what time does the career fair start? And then that's okay. Yeah, they're just looking for information. That's not trolling. But if you are ever confused about the difference, we can probably give you some examples. And that is it. When you respond, they win.
Just to hit on something she was saying, so we're going to have conflicts. Just make sure that, you know, first you confront the person and talk to them about the conflict. Then you go to your immediate supervisor. Then you come to HR. Okay, so kind of follow those chain of command. That way it helps at that point. Also, we're about to wrap this thing up. That's good news for y'all. So, but also, just want to say that, you know, you are the champions of your school and your district. You know, like when you have that bad day and you just want to go vent somewhere, remember, social media is not the place. There might be that parent that's just checking us out and sees that that's their first impression of the district, and you know it's not really a good representation of who we are. You know, I think you love being here. Hopefully you do. You're here. We are an amazing district. You know, our scores show it. Our culture shows it, and we want that to be represented in social media, not because we had a bad day or a bad moment at school. So think about that when you're posting. You know, you are marketing our district every time you put something on social media, on your website. So think about that's your career, right? You want the best students in your classroom. You want to bring good students here. So that's where you want to show that. So just be that champion for our district. And also as far as this goes, we talked about, you know, it's your responsibility to know the code of ethics, and you are responsible to make sure you know that, but it's also, something that's been added is you are responsible to report if you see someone else violating the code of ethics. So if you do not respond or not report it and you've seen it, you are actually violating the code of ethics. So if you see anything being done, make sure you're reporting that. Again, anonymous tips, you can do that. It was put together, I think Kate sent a newsletter recently, and we talked about the anonymous tips there. It's for you to report things as well as students, so use that to your advantage. And finally, as an HR team, I just want you to know that, we want you to be here. We want to coach you. We want it to be a place that you enjoy being here. This is your career, it's not just a job you go to. We are here to support, and I know this is kind of like a dark, presentation, talk about all the bad things you can't do, but we're really here to stop you, prevent you from getting in trouble. We want to be here to support you. Please email us, call us anytime you need anything, you have questions about anything. I guarantee you, Ms. Pritchard and Ms. Edelman, benefits and licensure, they will bend over backwards to get an answer to any questions you have. They are amazing. And of course, Ms. Stratton, of course, will do anything for you too. But just so you know, we are here for support. Please, if you need anything, come to us, because we're here to help you grow and help you this be a great career for you. So now Ms. Stratton's going to close up, I think. So.
You said it great. Yes, I just want to say again, thank you for your time and attention today. We are here to be your advocates and to help support you in any way that we can. We're always just a telephone call, an email, or a short drive away to Houston, and we're here to help you guys. So thanks again for coming today. We hope this information was helpful, and if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to us. Thank you.